When I first arrived in Dan Se, a small town nestled in the Loei province of Thailand, I was just another backpacker looking for something off the beaten path. The locals were preparing for the annual Phi Ta Khon festival, a celebration I had never heard of, but was immediately curious about. The whole town buzzed with excitement, and I was eager to see what all the fuss was about. The festival's origins, I learned, were rooted in ancient beliefs, a mix of animism, Buddhism, and local legends. It was said that the spirits of the dead and the supernatural beings, known as Phi, would join the living in a grand parade, wearing grotesque masks and colorful costumes. The whole thing was supposed to be lighthearted, a celebration to scare away bad luck and invite prosperity. But I soon discovered that the festival had a darker side, one that the locals didn't speak of openly. Some of them whispered about it late at night, when they thought no one was listening. I caught snatches of conversations about people who had seen more than just masks and costumes, about those who had seen the real Phi Ta Khon. It was on the second night of the festival that I started to feel something was off. The air was thick with the scent of incense and burnt offerings. The sound of drums echoed through the narrow streets, reverberating off the wooden houses. I was walking through the market, where vendors were selling everything from food to handcrafted masks, when I felt a chill creep up my spine. It was the kind of chill that makes your skin crawl and your heart beat just a little faster. At first, I brushed it off as my imagination, but then I noticed something strange. Among the revelers, there was one figure that didn't quite fit in. He, or it, stood at the edge of the crowd, watching. The mask it wore was unlike any of the others I'd seen. It was crude, almost primitive, with slanted eyes and a wide, crooked grin. The colors were muted, as if the mask had been left out in the sun for too long. I tried to get a better look, but every time I moved closer, the figure seemed to slip further away, disappearing into the sea of people. It wasn't until I was almost out of the market that I saw it again, standing near the entrance to the forest just beyond the town. Curiosity got the better of me. I followed the figure into the trees, my footsteps crunching on the dry leaves. The sounds of the festival faded behind me, replaced by the eerie silence of the forest. The figure moved with an unnatural grace, almost gliding through the underbrush. No matter how fast I walked, it always stayed just ahead, leading me deeper and deeper into the woods. The deeper I went, the darker it got. The canopy of trees above blocked out most of the moonlight, and soon I found myself relying on the faint glow of my phone to see. The figure was still ahead of me, its mask glowing faintly in the darkness. "Where are you going?" I called out, but my voice sounded small, swallowed by the oppressive quiet of the forest. The figure didn't respond, just kept moving forward, until it stopped suddenly in a small clearing. I stepped into the clearing, and that's when I realized just how far I had come. The trees around me were gnarled and twisted, their branches reaching out like skeletal fingers. The air was thick with the smell of damp earth and decaying leaves. The figure stood in the center of the clearing, its back to me. I felt a surge of fear, but also something else, a strange sense of inevitability, as if I had been meant to find this place. I took a step closer, and the figure slowly turned to face me. Up close, the mask was even more grotesque than I had imagined. The eyes were hollow, empty sockets that seemed to stare right through me. The grin was wide and jagged, as if carved by a dull knife. But it wasn't the mask that terrified me. It was the realization that there was nothing beneath it. No face, no body, just darkness. I stumbled back, my heart racing. What are you?" The figure didn't answer. Instead, it reached out a hand that was more shadow than flesh, and pointed to the ground at my feet. I looked down and saw something that made my blood run cold. There, half buried in the dirt, was another mask. This one was identical to the one the figure wore, but it was old and weathered, covered in moss and dirt. I bent down to pick it up, and as my fingers touched the cold surface, a wave of nausea washed over me. Images flashed through my mind, images of death and decay, of bodies lying in shallow graves, their faces hidden behind grotesque masks. I dropped the mask and stumbled back, the world spinning around me. The figure was gone, but the clearing felt even more oppressive, as if the very air was pressing down on me, suffocating me. I had to get out of there. I turned and ran, crashing through the underbrush, not caring where I was going as long as it was away from that place. The trees seemed to close in around me, their branches clawing at my clothes. But I kept running until I finally burst out of the forest and into the open fields beyond. I collapsed to the ground, gasping for breath. When I finally looked back, the forest was silent, the clearing hidden by the dense trees. The figure was gone, but the memory of that mask, those empty eyes and that twisted grin, haunted me. I left Dan Se the next day, unable to shake the feeling that something had followed me out of the forest. something that wasn't finished with me yet. I've heard the stories since then about people who've encountered the real Phi Ta Khon, the spirits who walk among us during the festival. They say that if you follow them into the forest, you might not come back, or if you do, you'll never be the same. And now, every year when the festival comes around, I feel that same chill, that same creeping fear. Because I know that somewhere out there, in the dark corners of the world, the Phi Ta Khon are still watching, waiting for the next lost soul to lead into the shadows. And I pray it's not me.